So the whole here conversation is a conversation of, we hear about brain drain a lot, and people grow up all around Indiana and they come to Indianapolis, and then they do things in Indianapolis, then they end up in Nashville, they end up in Austin, and we lose those people. The decision to stay was based on business climate, was based on what you were already doing? Was there an intangible?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's ultimately why, I'm doing what I'm doing now, is I'm grateful for my Indiana journey. I think that climate, the ability to literally start a business from nothing and build it into a large national business in this community, in this economy, I think there's something to that, right? And I think it's easier to be an entrepreneur, or at least easier to be an entrepreneur in this state, to take, risk. And so, I mean, that's part of my gratitude for this journey, is that I'm grateful that I was able to access the American dream here.
Walk me through it.
Yeah.
Because the story gets told as you do it, that you were mowing lawns.
That's right.
You had the lawnmower and you were pushing, and you were mowing lawns, and the lawns were taller than you, and you were with a machete and nothing but sheer will and determination. You were mowing, but one does not go from mowing lawns to having the real estate portfolio.
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't. There are steps along the way.
Well,
so walk me through a couple.
It's a direct straight line, and I'll tell you. 15, 16 years old. I've always been industrious. My family values hard work, right? My grandfather lands in Boone County. Didn't have education, so guess what he valued? An education for my father. And in hard work, you're a farmer. He was a barber, for crying out loud. He made $5 a haircut, most likely. The guy was a worker. I got the hard work gene. And so, I was working 12, 13, 14, but me and three buddies literally borrowed the parents' lawnmowers at age 15 and 16. They were 16. Started cutting lawns, and then we got bigger clients, and then we got bigger clients. At our peak, we were billing $80,000, $90,000 a summer. Teenagers, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds. We were borrowing money from banks. We were buying insurance. We were getting yelled at by customers, right? We were doing a good job. We were selling. We were collecting. We were balancing our checkbook. 17, 18 years old. I made enough money cutting grass because I had to, because my father had to pay his way through college. I had to pay my way through college. So I paid my way through IU, got into IU. I wasn't a great student per se, but I was determined, right? So I got a education, cut lawns, did snow removal. But my sophomore year at IU, one of the partners came to us, the other three partners, and said, hey, I want to buy the business. I'm like, okay. I'm tired of cutting grass. It's been great, but so we valued the business. We knew what we were making, we knew what we were netting, and he valued the business fairly at $20,000. That included the equipment, the trailers, the trucks, the accounts, and so that means everybody got a $5,000 check, right? I got a $5,000 check, and the miracle of all miracles is that I didn't blow it at IU, right?
Right.
The divine intervention is I didn't blow it, and I literally was curious about real estate. One of the other partners' dads was a home builder, so I was curious about real estate. My father didn't know anything about real estate. So I literally went through the Indianapolis Star real estate section and found a bank repo from Union Federal Bank for $5,000. How about that? I ended up buying it. I didn't know anything about it, so I called my father's good friend who's a lawyer. I said, how do I do this? I ended up closing on a $5,000 rental property house by the IUPUI campus, sophomore at IU. One of the partners came along with me. I used the $5,000 to buy the house. He used his $5,000 to renovate the house. We did all the work ourselves, painting, carpentry, cabinets, whatever. That was it. Sophomore year, first rental property, 1984. Today, that's 40 years later. But I liked it. I had a blast. We did it during the summers, and I was driving back and forth to IU. And so by the time I graduated from IU, I liked it enough that I ended up with 31 rental units by the time I graduated from IU.
Yeah, but again, that's a massive jump. There were loans involved in there. There were, being able to show a bank that you had a credit worthiness. What I'm told is that maneuver is impossible.
No.
Now, maybe the dollar amounts are different,
Yeah.
but I'm told that maneuver is impossible because that is reserved for the rich guy, it's reserved for the wealthy guy, and the average person cannot do that.
Yeah. So has it changed in 40 years? Maybe. But the guy 40 years before me would say it was impossible, right? So it's, it's not impossible because it happened. I went to there was a 5-unit building in Lockerbie, and the guy wanted to sell it, and I said, well, I can't borrow any money. Will you finance it for me? Will you give me a seller contract? And he said, yes. And I had like a couple $1,000s down, and I bought it with a couple $1,000s down, and he gave me the loan, right? So it's those days. That's how those happened, right? That's how those happened. By way of interest, that the last building I ended up buying, I forget when it was, off junior year, senior year, was a 26-unit building. And that was on contract, okay? Same thing, right? I couldn't go get a bank loan. So put a little bit of money down because I'd been making a little money and bought it on contract. And it came with an employee. The guy worked there. He was the janitor. He was the super, right? And so he was 55 and kind of retired, and so he lived in the building, and he became really a part of our family. But think about it. I'm 20 and 21 years old by this time, working with this guy who's 55, and I think he thought I was a bit of a novelty. You know what I mean? But listen, I was determined. I was focused. I was learning, and I loved it.
You talk about working hard and bit by the bug, and this isn't the natural, but it is certainly part of Americana to be able to have this opportunity. Does Indiana fail to offer up this opportunity to Hoosier kids and Hoosier adults?
I don't think it fails. I do think life has become more complex over the years. I do think we can't stop talking about entrepreneurship and in hard work and determination and common sense. Let me digress, if I may. And there's a bit of good fortune in here, right? Like the people that come into your orbit when you're in those periods where, listen, I was poor. But one of those people was Dr. Bill Haberly, who was a renowned professor at IU, right? And he pulled me into his entrepreneurship club. And I was the first student in his entrepreneurship club because I was interested in entrepreneurship, obviously, right? And so I was in his entrepreneurship club. It's today the Kelly School, it's the Johnson School of Entrepreneurship. It's a curriculum today. So, but the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? So always back to that hard work gene I got from my grandfather, right? And my father. I do believe today that is still true. The harder work, you're evidence of that, right? The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Do we, in Indiana, inspire entrepreneurial spirit?
We do a pretty good job, but I tried it when I took my $1 a year job as Secretary of Commerce. I really wanted to up the focus on entrepreneurship and did a bit of that. Can't do it enough. I think it's the most important thing for our future.
Governor Holcomb said that what he would like to see is coding, right? We understand the high-tech job involves people typing on a keyboard. And he'd like to see coding as a requirement in schools across Indiana. Is this his way of saying this is how we get people engaged in entrepreneurship? Is this the right idea?
People are going to gravitate to what's interesting to them, right? So exposing them to enough things where they can gravitate to it, okay? In school, I think that's important. So I think coding and making sure it's widely available to as many kids as possible is super important. Some kids are not meant for college, right? So exposing them in 7th grade, this is part of my education plan, right? My Learn More, Earn More policy we rolled out is creating trade pathways, that if you just aren't interested, like I have a nephew that falls in this category, if you're just not interested in coding or college generally, I want to go in the trades. I want to go be in healthcare or life sciences. I want to go be, I like a civics pathway for police officers and firefighters and National Guard, right? Start creating these pathways so people can build lives. Not everyone wants to take risk like I did.
Right.
Not everyone does. They're just, for some reason, that's not their makeup. They want stability and pragmatism, and that's fine, because you can make a great living in Indiana with just hard work and pragmatism, and go home at night and not worry about it. But so exposing kids to those skill sets, those skill opportunities, apprenticeships, like they do in overseas, I think is super important, and it's part of a whole array of educational pathways.
So when you were with IEDC,
Yes, sir.
and I have, I think, 9 million issues with IEDC, because I shouldn't say I have an issue with you, I have an issue with IEDC, because I don't know if you could tell me what it is they do.
Right.
In the end result, are Hoosiers better off because of this? But I think where I wanted to start this was, what did the IEDC do? Mm-hmm. The Indiana Development Corporation. Economic Development Corporation.
Right.
Sorry, I forgot the economic part. See?
Sure.
Don't get a cold. That's the lesson here. What did it do under your 2 years to contribute to that very concept of either inspiring the entrepreneurial spirit or pressing the idea that not everybody's going to code, not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur. Some people want to be able to work at a stable gig, and that is their skill set, and they're good with that.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you back a bit, if that's okay.
Sure.
2003, when Mitch won his election, he looked at government. Government's very defensive. It's very slow and sluggish, right? I want to change that. I want to create urgency in customer service. I want to create some aspiration to go get the economy that's good for Indiana. But in 2003, he looked at our ability to compete with Ohio and Texas and North Carolina. And it was very defensive. It was very sluggish. It was very governmental. So he rolled out a quasi-governmental entity called the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. It was meant to interact with the business community on their terms, okay, not on governmental terms. Like when you go to Europe, you're on government's terms, or you go to California, you're on California's terms. He wanted to put our commerce function on business terms. So he created this quasi-governmental entity to run faster. Speed is a new incentive. To recruit high-wage jobs here, or jobs generally, and to support existing businesses that are here, to modernize themselves along the way. And so from that perspective, it was a really good decision. And then guess what? The rest of the country started copying the Indiana model as a quasi-governmental entity. So I won't say, you asked me the question earlier, what does the IEDC do? I'll tell you what it did under my watch, right? Because I showed up for my $1 a year, right? 2-year commitment, $1 a year. It was a service opportunity for me. That wasn't a career change, right? Because remember, I'd been a consumer of the Indiana economy for 38 years.
Right.
So I had some intuition about what they could be doing or should be doing and maybe weren't doing. So I showed up, and it always starts with building a great team. So I recruited that dynamic folks, gave them the roadmap on where we want to go. Okay, high wages was number one on the roadmap. Let's bring in, recruit, fertilize high wages for Hoosiers, including entrepreneurship and innovation. Remember, entrepreneurship was number 3 on my 5E plan that I rolled out. And then we looked at the resources that the legislature and the governor gave to the IEDC to do those things, and we invested them. So every dollar that we targeted towards higher wages or towards entrepreneurship, we wanted a return on that money from sales tax, income tax, property tax, right? So all the revenues we'd get back generated a really compelling return. And oh, by the way, people didn't receive that incentive from the IEDC unless they performed. So these were all performance-based. So as you know, I mean, historic results, $51 billion worth of new planned inbound investment, at wages 30% higher than any time in state history, and oh, by the way, 2 new industries, semiconductors and EV batteries, right? Semiconductors was not here. It should be here. I looked at the country. I looked at the globe. I looked at the national national landscape in the uncompetitive position that we've put ourselves in nationally, by the way, on the semiconductor issue. And it said Indiana should and can compete. Look at Purdue University, one of the best schools for microelectronics in the world. And we weren't focused on that high wage job. So $51 billion, unprecedented, of new inbound investment at wages 30% higher. And why is that important? Well, because Indiana's average wage is below U.S. average, which is frustrating. Why is that, right? And oh, by the way,
wait, why is that?
Because I think we have low aspiration. We're really happy getting on first. We don't shoot for third. We play not to win, play not to lose versus playing to win in the global economy. Everybody else is playing to win. Ohio's definitely playing to win. North Carolina, Arizona, Texas. So I came in with a mindset as a business guy. I'm going to run it like a business with aspiration, urgency, a great team, and a plan. And guess what happened? The results showed up. So we had fun, and I now, as a governor's candidate, I mean, if I wouldn't have had that experience, and I wouldn't been able to look under the hood of this great state, and I believe Indiana is great, it just can be much better. If I wouldn't have had that experience, I looked under the hood, and I saw this great 12-cylinder engine, and we're only using 8 cylinders of it. And so when you don't maximize your potential, guess what? Our 80,000 college kids leave. Right, so they're making an economic decision on their education investment. So when they graduate from Purdue or they graduate from Ball State, they're going to look at the educational investment they made or the student loan they got to pay back, and where are they going to go? They're going to go to Colorado because they're going to make more money, or they're going to go to Massachusetts, or they're going to go to Illinois or somewhere. So first and foremost, we need to keep our kids and our grandkids here by high-wage, future-focused industries. I proved that we can do that that's doable if you play to win. And then second of all, we're below a U.S. average on wages, which holds people back. That touches every Hoosier, right? And that's the one thing a governor does, and that's why I seem to be the only candidate in this race that is focused on economic opportunity, economic transparency.
The conversation about Indiana growth, affordability, entrepreneurship, taxation always comes into it. Mm-hmm. You a believer in getting rid of the state income tax?
I'm a believer in lower taxes, lifts people up.
Yeah, but are you a believer in getting rid of the state income tax?
No. I'll tell you why, right? 2 years in my dollar-a-year job, Commerce Secretary, 300 plus transactions dealing with global CEOs and small businesses and big businesses alike. Not one CEO or business owner or executive mentioned our high tax load. Not one. And so we're number 9 in the country. We are top 10 in the country for low taxation. Taxation to me is the palette of taxes. It's all of the taxes combined, and what's that look like? It's not one individual tax like the income tax, which is pretty low and going down even farther, by the way. We're ahead of schedule on paying down our unfunded pension. The legislature, I think, has done a pretty good job of titrating that tax load down. I think it's going to continue. I would like to see us in top 5 in the country in time, but what I don't want to see is that we cut $12 billion out of our budget next year or the year before, or the year after that, and then we stop making quality of life investments. We stop funding education. We don't give our cops the resources they need, or the firefighters the resources they need, right? So I think that you can cut muscle, and I think her plan is to cut muscle, right? I think there's a thoughtful way.
Her being Suzanne Crouch.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I believe the tax plan would cut muscle. I don't know how she's going to pay for quality of life improvements that keep our kids and our grandkids here, to grow our population, right, which is critically important to economic growth, and to fix education, and to do all the things that are just totally incumbent on a government to do. right?
Let's talk about that General Assembly and the work that they're doing. One of the big stories of this year, of this election season, is that there's a $1 billion shortfall in the projection for FSSA, right? Family Social Services Administration. The idea that, interestingly, and I don't think many people knew this, we pay families. We say you're going to be the caregiver of a child or somebody else who has this issue, developmental or what have you. We'll pay you instead of somebody else, and therefore you're able to take care of your child. And now, because of this $1 billion, and it's a projected shortfall, it's not actually missing the money, it's projected.
Correct.
The answer was, well, we can save $300 million of this by changing how these people get paid. And now there's a question of whether these people are going to get paid. Who's responsible for the shortfall? You're the governor. How do you fix it?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, government at its most essential level is supposed to keep us safe and take care of the people that are most vulnerable, correct? So with this issue, you need to make sure you have your facts together, you're slow and steady, and you communicate well, because these are folks that are vulnerable, with folks with disabilities, right? And so we need to make sure that we're communicating well, whatever the reality of it is. And so over-communicate, transparency, give people time to adjust if there's real adjustment coming, I think is the right way to handle it. But the way I understand it, I don't have all the facts, and we're still evaluating it, is that this was in some large part a federal government issue, and it was COVID related. And the program was evolving during and after COVID, right? And there's now a restabilization of the program back to pre-COVID kind of pay structure. And so we need to make sure that that's communicated well. No one wants $1 billion miss in forecasting, right? What they're not seeing is, for periods before this, the miss was to the good. So we had some misses to the good. This is a miss to the bad. $1 billion is a big number. We need to make sure that doesn't happen again. So let's get our hands around that. But let's be thoughtful about the impact to these folks if that program is going to get slowed down, and there's going to be an adjustment in the way they get paid out. Right. To your point, people are getting paid to stay home, which hasn't always been the case, and so I can see why there's an adjustment happening, but it needs to be over time and it needs to be well communicated.
So you're saying there's an adjustment. What these families are asking is, am I going to be able to take care of my child, yes or no?
Right.
Has in your view, has the state provided them an answer that has value?
I'm not sure yet, but let me focus on kind of a step back issue for you. Medicaid enrollment continues to escalate, right? And that's the bigger picture in my view, in many ways, because when Medicaid rolls continued, and I think under some count it's doubled in 10 years, what's that tell you? It tells you people in Indiana are stressed, right? That's the bigger issue for me, is that, and it ties right back to wages are 30% lower than U.S. average, GDP growth is lower than U.S. average, and that's why I'm laser focused on lifting people up through higher wages and a growing economy. A growing economy allows you the resources to address a Medicaid issue, right? It allows you to invest in education and public safety and mental health, which is a challenge, in healthcare issues. And I believe that when you have a prosperous, a growing economy, and you're investing in you can invest in the things that need to be invested in. And guess what? If people are prosperous and they feel financially secure, government can be smaller. Crime is down, education's up, health outcomes are better. These issues are reduced. When people are financially secure, government can actually be smaller. And how do you get people to be financially secure? You create the conditions for a growing economy. You create the conditions for entrepreneurship and innovation to happen so people can be more financially secure. So that's the big, I think, concept coming out. Yes, it's unfortunate we had $1 billion miss. Yes, we have to do this the state has to do this the right way on any changes that happen to the program. But the big picture is listen, we need to grow the economy. We need to put more money in people's pockets.
Go back to this commentary you made that the role of government is to, and this idea of good wages and the series of things that you have gone through. You're a Republican.
Correct.
In a state that has a Republican supermajority.
Correct.
And has had a Republican supermajority for as long as I've lived in Indiana, which is coming on 10 years. You've had a Republican supermajority. Are you telling me that the Republican Party hasn't figured out how to create high wages and that high wages matter?
It takes time. It does.
It's been 10 years.
I know.
What's the value of a supermajority if they don't act in a way that actually gets you what it is you're trying to do? And you would think, ostensibly, I think that would be the right word, they'd be on your side on this. They would be on our side on this. They would be the people who believe in entrepreneurship and want to create high wages, except it's been a decade, and that's not the case.
Right.
How do you respond to that?
I run for governor. Right? I run for governor. I mean, running for governor has never been on my to-do list. I started a business from mowing lawns and then bought a $5,000 rental property. I've been a private business guy my entire life, but this state's been good to me. It's created an environment where I can pursue and achieve the American dream, and I'm grateful, and I want that for others, and that's why I volunteered essentially as Secretary of Commerce. And my thesis panned out, right? That we're good, we're great, but we can be exceptional. But you've got to go get the economy that's good for Hoosiers. You've got to go get the future. It's just like cold calling. You got to go cold call the future we want for our citizenry. And even those higher wages, even those future-focused jobs that's transforming Kokomo right now, literally transforming that community. And I want to talk about Kokomo. It's still going to take time, right? So, I'm running for governor, and I'm going to work really hard to create those conditions to fertilize the entrepreneurial and innovation ecosystem, but it's still going to show up way beyond my term, right? And that's the way, that's what a governor should do. That's where we've lost our way with career politicians, okay? Career politicians want results in 3 years so they can get reelected. I don't care. I really don't care. I want to shoot higher. I want to change the trajectory so that Indiana can take full advantage of its incredible people and its incredible workforce and its great location, its amazing universities and good infrastructure, and grow wages for Hoosiers into the future. Because we have to keep our college kids here. We have to make sure our third graders are able to read.
You moved to education.
I did.
Let's talk education. Is education a public good, or is education a consumable product?
It's definitely a fundamental need. It's a public good, and it is also a consumable product, right? So I want to be thoughtful about how I'm looking at it. Fundamentally, I think our educational system is like many other things, and when government puts its paws on it, it's very lethargic. It doesn't innovate very well. It doesn't change. Markets change, right? The stock market changes every day. Business markets change every day. My business, I shook it up about every 10 years, right? Just to make sure we're in the market. Government doesn't do that. Education hasn't done that. I believe our educational system is very backward-looking. It should be very forward-looking.
Define what that means.
It's just been patched and paper clipped together for 50 to 75 years. That's why. There's never been, do you know of any wholesale new innovations in education that's affecting Hoosier students right now? No. It's incremental change over a very long period of time. And so it's inherently backwards looking, right? And gosh, wouldn't it be nice to wave our magic wand and make a new construct for modern education that's very future focused for our kids, based on new technologies, based on maybe smaller schools, smaller classrooms, maybe based on individualized education, going at the pace of the kid. versus making the kid go at the pace of, whatever the book says or whatever I-STEP test they need to take. How about that? Right? And so I think that's modernizing education, making it individualized to the kid. The kids all learn at different paces. And so that's what I mean by, turning the educational Titanic to the future.
What in a chamber's administration does that?
I mean, this is, I'm going to be humble about, the ability to turn the Titanic here, but you got to start somewhere, right? You got to have a dream that our kids are going to have more individualized education. You got to have a dream that our third graders go into fourth grade reading, being able to read, because they're 4 times more likely to drop out of school if they can't read, right? I'm going to have a dream that parents are more involved in kids' education, like I was, right? I'm going to have a dream that we're educating kids on career pathways in the 7th grade so that by the time they graduate in 12th grade, they know where they want to go, right? I'm going to have a dream that these kids, think a civics pathway is cool. Like when I was growing up, I looked up to people with uniforms, right? Firefighters and police officers. Those are cool, dangerous, albeit careers, but let's start talking about it in 7th grade, because there's stresses on workforce everywhere, and especially police. So anyway, you could tell I've given this some thought, right? And I have a dream about a future-focused educational system that's more individualized to the kid.
Let's talk about the knock on you.
Oh, apparently it's a long list.
Oh, well, I had to just leave it to the top one.
Yes, sir.
Can you outspend Mike Braun? Because that's what you're going to have to do to win this thing.
So, yeah, the answer is yes. So this whole front runner conversation, right? He may be a name ID front runner, but he's certainly not a front runner in new ideas, fresh ideas. He's not a front runner in what he's done in the Senate, nor in the Indiana legislature when he was here. So the voters are gonna have to make a decision who they want to run their governor. A career politician, a DC politician, as nice a man as he is, or somebody who's built things, run things, not from politics.
Let me rephrase. You are going to buy the governor's mansion. That's the knock on you.
Well, I mean, I'm passionate about Indiana's potential. Okay, I've accessed the American dream in this Indiana through hard work. So I think I would rather have a business person who started from cutting lawns and knows how to build stuff, signs the front of a paycheck, worried about payroll, building great teams. I would rather have, and by the way, a business guy who was able to succeed over time. I'd rather have that guy running stuff than the alternative to that, which is a DC career politician, right? Whether that's Mike Braun or someone else. So, I mean, they said that again with him in 18 too, right? He was buying the Senate seat. I mean, that's just politics. I got to get used to it, right? I'm not used to it. I was a very private guy before this, but I'm in it to win it. I'm passionate about Indiana, and I'm investing in the opportunity to serve Hoosiers.
We have this past year experienced a property tax issue.
Yes.
In the state of Indiana that has bothered every single Hoosier.
Yes.
What in the world am I now spending? Why in the world am I now spending this? I thought these things were capped.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
How does it get avoided in the future?
Yeah.
And is there room to say to seniors on a fixed income, to veterans, you know what? You're done with property taxes. We got you covered. All of it.
So to your point earlier about taxation, right? I gave you my theory on taxation. Yes, lower taxes is the objective at all points, right? Let's titrate down our taxes over time, right? We're already a low tax state. Let's continue to do that work, but not at the expense of education, blah, blah, blah. You've heard me say all that. The one tax that I hear about, and I've been to 300 events all over the state. I am meeting Hoosiers where they are, and I'm having fun. I call it my listening sessions. I am, in my business, I know how our business is doing by listening to my customers. As a CEO of the state of Indiana, as a governor, you can't do it without listening to the customer, right? And so what I've heard the most of, not income tax, not sales tax, it's property taxes. Will you help address property taxes? Everywhere I've been, and I've been all over the state. And I think, so the answer is we've got to address it for Hoosiers. And one aspect of the property tax challenge is the assessment and the way we assess. That's fundamental to how the property tax levy happens, right? People don't understand the assessment and valuation mechanism. And, oh, by the way, it's different in every county. So I would like to really dig into that if I'm governor and try to figure out how to standardize it so that we don't want to have winners and losers, but make it just more I think simple is best, especially for consumers, right? So can we make property tax assessments as customer friendly as the BMV?
Well, one of the things, if we're talking about simple, is I own something, but if I don't pay the state or pay the county, I no longer own the thing that I own. Right. Nothing is more simple than you either own it or you don't. That is a binary function. Right. And property taxes say, not really. You don't really own this thing.
Right.
So are property taxes the best way for us to be doing? Well, we always say this is how we fund schools. Is this the way to fund schools?
Right.
Well, you know, how property taxes relates to education.
Right. Sure. Yeah, I got to get into it. I mean, I think that is very that is a very comfortable way for local communities to generate their revenues through property taxes, right? And so they would have to be at the very start of those conversations if we were going to look at a different levy. But fundamentally, let's keeping it simple, let's just make it a more opaque process so people understand it, right? And we don't have these big fluctuations in taxes that make people uncomfortable. I had a gentleman, I was in Ligonier last week in a diner with 14 folks, and this one, older gentleman said his property taxes have more than doubled in the last 7 or 8 years. And he's literally concerned about being able to stay in his house, and that is something we need to address. That is a stress that an 80-year-old doesn't need.
Is there room in the mindset of a chamber's administration to say, hey, 80-year-old, you're covered. You've paid your property taxes. We're good. You're done. You're finished. Is there a place for seniors on a fixed income to get that? Is there a place for veterans to get that in the state of Indiana?
Sure. I will tell you, I love blank sheets of paper. I love to paint on a blank canvas, and that's what you're saying. Can we start with a blank canvas as it relates to property taxes? I think you should. The answer that will infuriate anybody is that, well, that's always the way we've done it, right? Me as a business guy, when I hear that, I go nuts. Just because we've always done it that way is not an answer, right? Let's look at a modern way of doing this that addresses the challenges that we're hearing from Hoosiers, that I'm hearing, that you're hearing from Hoosiers. Let's start with a blank canvas. We may end up back there, right? But likely we won't. We'll end up somewhere in between, right, on property taxes. But of course, let's have open minds and a blank sheet of paper on some of these issues.
So it's not something that in a chamber's world is, this is one of our pillars, this is one of the policies we put out. You're saying it's as good of an idea as any, let's see how we go about doing it.
I would say I'm hearing the most about property taxes, right? And so once I figure out where the printer would be and the coffee maker would be and my desk would be, we're gonna dig into what the real challenges are at the grassroots level on property taxes and see if we can find a better way.
You brought up, we've discussed education, and I did want to come back to it. Because one of the things we didn't discuss was, as I'd asked about, Governor Holcomb and wanting to teach kids how to code, I don't think we ever got the answer to whether or not that's something that schools should be teaching as a requirement. And maybe better asked, I'd like an answer to that question. And then what is it that we should be educating our kids to? Where is the education gap that the state believes it is best built to solve?
Well, you've got to keep education parent-centric, number one. Parents need to be involved. That's number one. Number two, you got to teach basics: reading, writing, history, fundamental life skills, right? We don't want outside opinion-based education, right? This is the basics. We want the basics, right? And then I think if you're talking about how to maximize Hoosier incomes, how to learn more to earn more, truly, we need to look at if a young person's going to build a life in Indiana, what are the careers and the industries that'll support them, right? Lilly in our life sciences industry is humongous. It's great careers. It's changing the world. And we can continue to grow that industry with the right amount of people. So let's educate our kids on how to be, leaning into life sciences, to be scientists, right? Leverage our industry, through apprenticeships, right? And other things. But let's look at our industry out there and educate to it. Engineers,
Is there anything that you're industry adverse to?
No.
Because I'm going to answer my own question, which is really not a thing you're supposed to do in an interview.
Right.
Do not do what I'm doing right now. We need engineers. We need life sciences. These are the standard statements that are constantly made and don't address the people who want to build a house. They don't address people who want to be the tradespeople. The idea that it takes 8 years to be a master plumber in the state of Indiana, well, this is going to be a real problem when we don't have enough and you need to figure out how you're going to flush the toilet in a governor's mansion. These are the things, but we keep pushing this concept of the life sciences and engineering, et cetera. My question to you is when you talk about education and the idea of being parent-centric, if parents understand their kids, what will education look like differently in a Chambers administration to allow parents to help their kids achieve what is their goal and their aptitude?
100%. And we talked a bit about earlier the pathways. I said not everybody's going to be a coder, not everybody's going to go to college. And it's about building a life that's good for you based on an income that supports you and it makes your quality of life good, however you define it, right? And we talked about, you're exactly right, I'm in the building business. I mean, one of the, a welder in Indiana is like gold, right? I mean, it's a great career right now, being a welder. But you're exactly right. Plumbers, carpenters, electricians, HVAC technicians. But the life sciences, I'm suggesting to you, you can go be a doctor, but you can also get a 2-year degree in healthcare, right? And so it's a trade pathway and you can work at Lilly and not have a 4-year degree, by the way. You can work at Samsung SDI with a 2-year technician degree. I think that's what you're talking about. Make sure we're educating kids the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, history, but also educating them on their options, their trade pathway options to build a life and build a career that may or may not have a 4-year college degree attached to it.
If you were to ask the Holcomb administration right now, they'll tell you they're winning. They're winning up the wazoo. Every day they'll tell you that they're winning. Do you think they are?
I think that the Holcomb administration has done a good job. Yes, I do. Okay, I definitely on the economic issues for sure. If you look at his last session, I mean, he through sheer determination, working with legislative leadership, finally got some public health funding. That's a big win, right? Indiana has got very low rankings on public health. We need to continue to lead in there. We just do, all right? He got a great pay increase for our police officers. I mean, he should be very proud of that, and I know the police officers are very thankful of that. They were behind. And so we need to make sure that it's hard enough to be a cop today, right? These guys need to get paid, right? And so he had some really good wins in that last legislative session, and some things, you know, that are moving Indiana forward. Now, there's tons of work to do, right? We need to continue to fund public education. And guess what? Guess how you do all that? Growing the economy. We can't do it by cutting. We don't want to be the most affordable state in the universe. I think we want to be the state with the best education or the greatest lakes and parks. I think we want to have the coolest you know, industries, right? I don't know that we want to be known as purely the most affordable place to live. Grow our economy. We can do it. I proved it. We can go get industries that have never been here before. Higher wages. Take the proceeds of that growing economy to fix things, invest in quality of life, build more housing, invest in green space, make sure broadband is everywhere, you know? And so that's my passion as it relates to this race.
What's going to be the most unpopular thing you do?
I dare bring up, you know, bold decision making is not always popular, right? Look at Mitch Daniels with his toll road decision. That was the low point of his career, from just a popularity perspective. Mm-hmm. But history's judging him really, really well there, right? So I think making tough decisions that transcend a 4-year term are what will probably make me unpopular, right? Making decisions that probably don't set you up well for a re-election, which is just fine. That's the way our founding fathers wanted it, right? I mean, why are these guys hanging around for decades? Get in, do your service, and get out. And that's the decision making we need, right? When you're making 3-year decisions, I think those 3-year decisions, in many instances, are letting Hoosiers down, because it's not the right long-term decision for the economy or for the people or for education or for whatever. That's just a concept, but.
That is Brad Chambers. You're going to be able to catch all of the nominees, Republican nominees, for governor right here at WIBC, WIBC.com. All the videos will be there for you to check out, all the interviews in full. Of course, there'll be shorts and reels that we're putting out all over the place so you can learn about these candidates and some of the specific subjects that we discuss. But everything will be found at WIBC.com, so you'll have access to it so you can make an informed decision come the day of the primary on May 7th. That is Brad Chambers. I appreciate you being here. I'm Tony Katz, 93 WIBC.